Hello guys, welcome back to my lessons. Today we're going to talk about genetics, which is a topic that is a bit long and it needs you to understand the following key concepts that we're going to talk about. And then it revolves around characteristics. It's all about the characteristics that people have. For an example, big eyes, small eyes, long hair, short hair, being tall and being short. So those are the characteristics, right? So for you to end up having small eyes, end up being tall or being short is because of your genes. Hence the topic is called genetics, right? So we have what we call a phenotype. So what is a phenotype? A phenotype is the physical appearance of a person. So if a person is tall, you can see that they are tall. The phenotype of their height is tall. If you can see that a person is short, the phenotype is short. So if they're talking about the characteristic of the size of the eyes, and you can see that this person has big eyes or small eyes. So what is the phenotype of a person with small eyes? Is small eyes. The phenotype of someone with big eyes, that is big eyes, right? So now let's talk about alleles. Alleles are just letters, big letters and small letters. As you can see, I have written capital letter T, small letter t, capital letter S, small letter s, capital letter B, small letter b. So these letters, you might ask me, what do they represent? So these letters represent the phenotypes, right? They're called alleles and they represent phenotypes. So for tall, T can represent tall, short, S can represent short, big can be represented by B, right? So they will tell you in the statement that being tall is controlled by allele T. And then they'll ask you, what is the allele for being tall? That is T. They will tell you in the statement that being short is controlled by an allele S. What is the allele of short? That is S. So let's move on to dominant allele and recessive allele. So dominant allele is the capital letters and recessive alleles are the small letters. So they will tell you in the statement that being tall is controlled by a dominant allele T. And then they'll ask you, what is the allele for being tall? That is capital letter T, because why? They said it is controlled by a dominant allele. And I said dominant alleles are the big letters. They will tell you that being short is controlled by a recessive allele S. What is the allele? What is the allele for short? That is small letter S, because they said it is controlled by a what? A recessive allele. They can say that having big eyes is controlled by the dominant allele B. What is the allele for big eyes? That is capital letter B, because dominant allele means capital letters. Recessive alleles means small letters. So we have what we call a genotype. So genotype is combining two alleles together. We can have capital letter T, and then a capital letter T, small letter t, small letter t, and a small letter t. So two alleles combined together are called a genotype. So now we have a genotype that is in homozygous dominant condition. Homozygous mean the same, dominant means capital letter. So homozygous, the same capital letters, the same two capital letters. For an example, T, T. So if they tell you being tall is controlled by a dominant allele T, and a man who is homozygous dominant, and they ask for the genotype of the man. A man is homozygous dominant. So the genotype is going to be capital letter T, capital letter T. So now we have homozygous recessive. Homozygous means the same, recessive small letters. Same small letters, homozygous recessive. Hence we have small letter T, small letter T. Heterozygous, this one is different. Is just a letter, a capital letter and a small letter of the same letter. For an example, capital letter T and a small letter t. Another genotype that can be in heterozygous condition is capital letter S and a small letter s, or a capital letter B and a small letter b. Right, so let's move on to these questions. Let's see if we can answer them. In humans, being tall is controlled by a dominant allele, right? So being tall is controlled by dominant allele. Dominant allele is a capital letter, and they've given us T there in brackets. A man who is homozygous tall and a woman who is heterozygous tall have children. So in a statement, when they talk about a characteristic, right, they talk about two sides of the characteristic. For an example, if they're talking about height, they will talk about being tall and being short. If they're talking about the length of the hair, they'll talk about the hair being long and the hair being short. So they go together. So the question says, an allele for tall. You're being told in the statement that being tall is controlled by dominant allele T, capital letter T. So allele for tall is capital letter T, and allele for short is small letter t. Phenotype of the man, you are told in the statement that the man is homozygous tall. So the phenotype is tall, what you can see, the physical appearance. And the woman is heterozygous tall. Heterozygous or not, she is still tall. So phenotype of the woman is tall. The genotype of the man, genotype, right? So you're writing the tall in, I like to say, in a more scientific, in a scientific way, right? So you write it using alleles. So genotype of the man, because the man is homozygous tall, it means that the genotype is going to be homozygous dominant, because tall is dominant. It's controlled by a dominant allele. Hence, the genotype of the man is going to be capital letter T, capital letter T. Homozygous tall, homozygous meaning the same, tall, dominant allele. Hence, we have two capital letter T's. And then the genotype for the woman is heterozygous. Once you see the word heterozygous, know that the letters that you're given, you're going to write the capital letter of it and a small letter. Hence, the genotype of the woman is the capital letter and the small letter. So the reason why the woman's phenotype is tall, although she has the allele of being short, the small letter, the reason is because the T is dominant. So when it is dominant, the phenotype takes the dominant allele. So it means that it overrides the recessive allele. The recessive allele does not show itself, it does not express itself in a heterozygous condition. So let's move to another question. But before we move, let's go back to the key concepts. Phenotype, we talk about being tall, being short, big, what you can see with your eyes, that this person is tall. So the phenotype is tall. The alleles are big letters and small letters. They can ask you allele for tall. If they said it's dominant, you're going to write capital letter T. If they said that the allele for tall is recessive, you're going to write small letter t. Dominant allele are the capital letters. Recessive alleles are the small letters. Genotype are the alleles, two alleles combined together. Homozygous dominant means the same two capital letters. Homozygous recessive means the same small letters. Heterozygous means a capital letter and a small letter. So let's move on to the question. In humans, the ability to roll the tongue is due to a dominant allele. So the characteristic here is tongue rolling, right? They've just spoken about being able to roll the tongue, ability to roll the tongue. I told you a characteristic has two sides. The first side is being able to roll the tongue. The second one is not being able to roll the tongue. So let's call being able to roll the tongue roller, and not being able to roll the tongue non-tongue roller. And then a man who is heterozygous for tongue rolling and a woman who cannot roll her tongue have children. Use the symbols T and capital letter T and a small letter t. So big letter T, it represents the dominant allele. Small letter t represents the recessive allele always. So which one is dominant? To roll a tongue, ability to roll a tongue. So what is the allele for tongue roller? Being able to roll a tongue, that is capital letter T. The allele for not being able to roll the tongue, which is non-tongue roller, that is small letter t. And then the phenotype of the man. The phenotype is the physical appearance, right? A man who is heterozygous for tongue rolling. He is heterozygous. It means that his genotype is going to be a capital letter and a small letter. So what is his phenotype? His phenotype is going to be a tongue roller because the dominant allele will override the recessive allele. So the phenotype takes the dominant allele. So phenotype of the woman, they just told us that the woman cannot roll her tongue. He cannot roll her tongue, so the phenotype is non-tongue roller. They will tell you in the statements or on the key, they will tell you that the phenotype of being able to roll a tongue is tongue roller or non-tongue roller. If they didn't tell you, just write the ones that are on the statement. So the genotype for the man, they said the man is heterozygous. Heterozygous, that is capital letter T and a small letter t. Genotype of the woman, we have genotype of the woman because he can roll her tongue, then that is small letter t and a small letter t. She cannot be capital letter T and a capital letter T because that would mean she can roll her tongue. She cannot be heterozygous, which is a big letter T and a small letter t, because then the big letter will override the recessive allele and then it would mean she can roll her tongue. Since she cannot roll her tongue, it means she is small letter t and a small letter t. So I want us to talk about the following key concepts. It's the same concepts that I was talking about. But the first one, let's talk about a gene. What is a gene? Is a small portion of DNA coding for a particular characteristic, right? So let me explain. In your body, you have cells, right? All over your body, you have billions of cells, right? So in the cell, in one cell, in the nucleus, you have chromosomes. So look at the diagram on the right-hand side. We have a cell there. In the nucleus, we have chromosomes. So they've taken out one chromosome there to show you where a gene is located. Inside the chromosome, we have a DNA. So a DNA is a portion, is a part of chromosome. Small part of chromosome is a DNA. And then they've taken out the DNA there. It's double-stranded. And then in the DNA, the small part of DNA is a gene. So a gene is a small part on what? On the DNA. Hence, they are saying it's a small portion of DNA, coding for what? For a particular characteristic, meaning representing a certain characteristic. For an example, having big eyes, right? So a gene is a part of DNA or a portion of DNA. And then DNA is a portion on a chromosome, and a chromosome is found in the nucleus of a cell. So let's move on to alleles. These are different forms of gene which occur at the same locus or position on the homologous chromosomes. So let's look at these homologous chromosomes there on the right-hand side. As you can see, it's showing alleles TT. So alleles, they are genes, right? I told you what a gene is. They are genes that occur at the same position. A location for or a position of a gene, it is called a locus. A different form of a gene which occur at the same locus, those are called alleles. And then I have explained that alleles are written as letters, big letters and small letters. And then we have a genotype, a genetic composition or genetic makeup of an organism, right? That is a way of writing a genotype. You write genotype using letters. Letters from what? From the alleles. Phenotype is the physical appearance of an organism determined by the genotype. For an example, tall, short. What you can see that this person is tall, that is the phenotype, tall. Dominant allele, an allele that is expressed or shown in the phenotype when found in the heterozygous condition. So what they're saying is that in a heterozygous condition, for an example, capital letter T and a small letter t, the phenotype is going to take what? The dominant allele. Hence they're saying that it is the allele that shows itself in the phenotype when it is found in a heterozygous condition. In homozygous condition as well. So in homozygous condition, when you see two dominant alleles, two capital letters, the phenotype is going to take the what? The dominant allele. For an example, if the dominant allele or the capital letter means tall, it's T, it means tall. So it means that the phenotype is going to be tall. It takes what? The dominant allele. So the recessive allele is an allele that is masked or not shown in the phenotype when shown in the heterozygous condition. So this allele cannot show itself in the phenotype when found in heterozygous condition. I told you that the dominant allele, it overrides the recessive allele. So the phenotype is going to be that of the dominant allele. So it is only expressed in the homozygous recessive condition. So if we have a recessive condition, for an example, a small letter t and a small letter t, maybe which means short, then recessive allele is going to express itself in this case. And then we have a heterozygous, two different alleles for a particular characteristic. Two letters, one letter, capital letter, and another one, small letter. And then we have what we call homozygous. Homozygous, two identical alleles for a particular characteristic. I told you homozygous means the same. A homozygous recessive, the same small letters. Homozygous dominant, the same capital letters. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing more lessons on this topic, and I hope you understand. Thank you.